The spatula clattered to the floor, splattering pancake batter across my freshly mopped kitchen tiles. I stared at the mess, fighting back tears of frustration. This was supposed to be easy. How hard could it be to make a simple breakfast? "Everything okay in there, hon?" Ben called from the dining room. I plastered on a smile he couldn't see. "Just peachy. Be ready in a jiffy." Grabbing paper towels, I frantically wiped up the spill. My phone pinged with a notification, another comment on my latest blog post about effortless entertaining. If they only knew. I tossed the soiled towels and retrieved a clean spatula, determined to salvage this disaster. The griddle sizzled as I poured fresh batter, praying for edible results. Ben appeared in the doorway, looking annoyingly handsome in his tweed jacket. "Ellie, we're running late. I have that faculty meeting, remember?" I know. Just give me 5 more minutes." I flipped a slightly burnt pancake onto a plate, wincing at its sad appearance. He frowned, eyeing the mess. "Maybe we should just grab something on the way?" "Did you forget to set an alarm again?" I bit back a retort. "No, I've been up since 6. These things just take time." 6? He raised an eyebrow. "What have you been doing all morning?" The accusation in his tone made my cheeks burn. I gestured at the immaculate living room, visible through the archway. "Cleaning, obviously. You know how I like to keep things tidy." Ben's eyes narrowed. "Ellie, be honest. Did you hire a maid?" I gaped at him, pancake forgotten. "What? No, why would you think that?" He sighed, running a hand through his salt and pepper hair. "It's just, everything's always so perfect. The house, your outfits, those elaborate blog posts. I know how much you struggled with housework when we first got married. It doesn't add up." My throat tightened. "So you think I'm lying? That I can't possibly manage our home without help?" "I didn't say that," Ben backpedaled. "I just worry you're stretching yourself too thin, trying to maintain this image." I slammed the spatula down. "It's not an image, Ben. This is who I am now. I've worked hard to improve." He held up his hands. Okay, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have accused you." But the damage was done. I turned away, blinking back tears. "Your pancakes are ready. I need to get dressed." I fled upstairs, leaving Ben calling after me. In our bedroom, I collapsed onto the bed, my carefully constructed world crumbling around me. My phone buzzed again. Another glowing comment, praising my seemingly effortless life. If they only knew the truth, how I spent hours scrubbing and re-scrubbing, how I practiced recipes late into the night, how I agonized over every word and photo on my blog. I'd worked so hard to become the perfect wife, the envy of our social circle. And now Ben thought it was all fake? Anger bubbled up, replacing the hurt. I'd show him. I'd prove I could do it all, be the ideal homemaker and a successful career woman. Squaring my shoulders, I marched to the closet and selected a crisp white blouse and pencil skirt. I touched up my makeup, erasing any trace of distress. Downstairs, Ben was finishing his pancakes. He looked up guiltily as I entered. "Ellie, I'm sorry. I shouldn't have." I cut him off with a bright smile. "Water under the bridge, darling. Now, don't you have a meeting to get to?" He blinked, thrown by my sudden change in demeanor. Right. Yes." I handed him his briefcase and kissed his cheek. "Have a wonderful day, sweetheart. I'll see you tonight." As the door closed behind him, my smile faded. I pulled out my phone, fingers flying over the keys as I composed a new blog post. 5 simple steps to a spotless home, I typed. Number 1, start with a positive attitude. I paused, a devious glint in my eye. Oh, I'd show Ben just how capable I could be, and I'd do it with a smile. I stood in the kitchen, scrubbing furiously at an already spotless counter. The events of the morning replayed in my mind, Ben's accusation echoing like a broken record. How dare he question my abilities, my dedication? The front door opened, and I tensed. Ben's footsteps approached, hesitant. "Ellie," he called, "can we talk?" I turned, forcing a smile. "Of course, darling. How was your meeting?" He frowned, clearly thrown by my cheerful demeanor. "It was fine. Look about this morning." "Water under the bridge," I chirped, turning back to my task. "No, it's not." Ben's hand on my arm stopped me. "We need to discuss this." I faced him, my smile slipping. "Discuss what exactly? How you don't trust me? How you think I'm incapable of managing our home?" He sighed. "That's not what I meant. I'm just concerned. You're always so perfect. It's not natural." My jaw clenched. "So now I'm too good at being a wife? Make up your mind, Ben." "That's not." He ran a hand through his hair. "I miss the old Ellie, The one who burned dinner and left laundry in piles, the one who didn't obsess over every little detail. I recoiled as if slapped. The old Ellie wasn't good enough for you, remember? You were always complaining about the mess, about eating takeout every night. I never meant for you to change completely. Ben's voice rose. I just wanted you to try a little harder. But this perfect housewife act, it's not you, Ellie. Act? I spat the word. You think this is an act? I've worked my ass off to become this person, to be the wife you wanted. Ben's eyes widened. I never asked for this. I want my wife back, not some Stepford robot. The room spun. I gripped the counter, knuckles white. So what do you want from me, Ben? To be a slob? To fail at everything? He reached for me, but I flinched away. I want you to be yourself. To relax. To let me help around the house instead of doing everything yourself. I laughed bitterly. Oh, that's rich. Now you want to help? After years of criticizing my efforts? I never. Save it. I held up a hand. I don't need your help. I'm managing just fine on my own. Ben's expression hardened. Are you? Really? Because I'm starting to wonder if you've hired someone to help. A maid, maybe? Or a ghostwriter for your blog? The accusation hung in the air, sharp as a knife. I stared at him, speechless. That's what I thought, Ben said quietly. Ellie, this has to stop. You're running yourself ragged trying to maintain this facade. It's not a facade, I shouted, surprising us both. This is who I am now. Why can't you accept that? Ben's shoulders slumped. Because I don't recognize you anymore, and I'm worried about what this obsession is doing to you, to us. I turned away, blinking back tears. Maybe you never knew me at all. The silence stretched between us, a chasm widening with each passing second. Finally, Ben spoke. I have an idea. Why don't you spend some time with my mother? Learn from her? She's always been great at balancing everything. I whirled around, incredulous. You want me to shadow your mother? Like some kind of trainee housewife? That's not what I meant. No, I think that's exactly what you meant. My voice was ice. You don't think I can do this on my own. You think I need Mommy to show me how to be a proper wife. Ben's face flushed. That's not fair. I'm trying to help. Well, don't. I grabbed my purse from the counter. I don't need your help, and I certainly don't need your mother's. Ellie, wait. But I was already out the door, slamming it behind me. As I stormed down the driveway, my phone buzzed. Another notification from my blog. You're such an inspiration, the comment read. How do you do it all? I laughed, the sound bordering on hysterical. If they only knew. If Ben only knew. One thing was certain. I'd show them all just how capable I could be, no matter what it took. The doorbell chimed, shattering my concentration. I glanced at the clock, frowning. Ben wasn't due home for hours, and I wasn't expecting anyone. Wiping flour-covered hands on my apron, I hurried to answer. My heart sank as I opened the door. Hannah, Ben's mother, stood on the porch, a bright smile on her face. Surprise, dear, she chirped, sweeping past me into the foyer. I thought I'd pop by for a visit. I plastered on a smile, panic rising in my chest. Hannah? What a lovely surprise. I'm afraid you've caught me in the middle of baking. She waved a dismissive hand. Oh, don't worry about me. I'll just have a look around while you finish up. Before I could protest, Hannah was off, inspecting every nook and cranny of our home. I trailed behind, frantically searching for any imperfection she might criticize. To my shock, Hannah's comments were nothing but praise. Oh, Ellie, the living room is immaculate, and look at how you've organized the bookshelves. Simply charming. I blinked, unsure how to respond. Thank you, and the kitchen! Hannah exclaimed as we entered. My goodness, it's spotless. You must work so hard to keep everything in such perfect order. A lump formed in my throat. This was the validation I'd been craving, but it felt hollow coming from Hannah. Did she truly mean it, or was this some kind of test? It's nothing, really, I mumbled, averting my eyes. Hannah's hand on my arm startled me. Ellie, dear, are you all right? You seem tense. I opened my mouth to brush off her concern, but to my horror, tears welled up instead. I'm fine. It's just been a stressful few days. Hannah's expression softened. Oh, sweetheart. Come, sit down. Tell me what's troubling you. Before I knew it, I was pouring out the whole sordid tale. The fight with Ben, his accusations, the suggestion that I shadow Hannah. To my surprise, my mother-in-law listened without judgment, her face growing increasingly concerned. When I finished, Hannah shook her head. Oh, Ellie, I'm so sorry you've been going through this alone. and I'm furious with my son for treating you this way." I gaped at her. You are?" "Of course," Hannah's eyes flashed. "The nerve of him questioning your abilities after all you've accomplished and suggesting you shadow me, as if you need lessons in homemaking. Honestly." A weight lifted from my shoulders. I was worried you'd agree with him." Hannah squeezed my hand. "Never. Ellie, you've created a beautiful home here. More importantly, you've built a successful career with your blog. Ben should be celebrating your achievements, not tearing you down." Tears threatened again, but this time from relief. "Thank you, Hannah. You have no idea how much that means to me." We sat in companionable silence for a moment before Hannah spoke again, her tone hesitant. "Ellie, dear, may I ask you something?" I nodded, suddenly wary. "Are you happy? Truly happy, I mean. Not just putting on a brave face for the world?" The question caught me off guard. I opened my mouth to give my usual cheery response, but the words stuck in my throat. Hannah's eyes were kind but knowing. "It's okay if you're not, you know. No one can be perfect all the time, not even the fabulous lifestyle blogger Ellie Matthews." Something inside me cracked. The facade I'd worked so hard to maintain began to crumble. "I'm exhausted," I whispered, the admission feeling like both a betrayal and a relief. "I'm constantly terrified of slipping up, of not being good enough. For Ben, for my followers, for myself." Hannah nodded, understanding in her eyes. "Oh, my dear, you don't have to carry this burden alone. Have you talked to Ben about how you're feeling?" I shook my head, shame coloring my cheeks. "I can't. He already thinks I'm faking it all. If he knew how much I'm struggling, then he'd have the chance to support you," Hannah finished gently. "Ellie, marriage is a partnership. You don't have to be perfect all the time." As her words sank in, the front door opened. Ben's voice called out, "Ellie, are you home? I saw Mom's car outside." Hannah and I exchanged a look. The moment of truth had arrived. I smoothed my dress for the 100th time, forcing a smile as Ben and I walked into the faculty dinner. After our recent fights, I was determined to prove I could be the perfect wife he seemed to want. The room buzzed with conversation, academics in tweed jackets mingling over glasses of wine. "There's Jack," Ben said, steering me towards a portly man with a salt and pepper beard. "I want you to meet his wife, Sarah. She's amazing, runs their household like clockwork while volunteering at the hospital." My stomach clenched. Another impossible standard to measure up to. Jack beamed as we approached. "Ben, and this must be the famous Ellie. We've heard so much about you." I shook his hand, my blogger persona slipping into all good things, I hope. A harried-looking woman appeared at Jack's side, dark circles prominent under her eyes. "Sorry I'm late," she muttered. "The sitter canceled last minute." "Ellie, this is my wife, Sarah," Jack said proudly. "Superwoman herself." Sarah's tired eyes met mine, and I saw a flicker of recognition. Not of me, but of the exhaustion we both felt. As the men fell into shop talk, Sarah leaned closer. "So you're the lifestyle guru. How do you do it? I can barely keep my head above water most days." I opened my mouth to give my usual perky response, but something in her desperate expression stopped me. "Honestly, it's not easy. Some days I feel like I'm drowning too." Sarah's eyes widened. "Really? But your blog, everything looks so perfect." I glanced at Ben, engrossed in conversation. "It's mostly smoke and mirrors," I admitted quietly. "I'm constantly stressed, trying to maintain this image." "God, I thought it was just me," Sarah breathed. "Jack's always going on about how I should be more like you, effortlessly juggling everything." Anger flared in my chest. "There's nothing effortless about it, and it's not fair for them to expect that from us." Sarah nodded vigorously. "I know, but try telling them that. Jack thinks I'm just being lazy when I can't keep up." "Ladies," Ben's voice interrupted our conspiratorial whispers. "What are you two gossiping about?" I plastered on a smile. "Oh, just swapping recipes. Sarah was telling me about her famous pot roast." Ben chuckled. "Better not give away all your secrets, Sarah. Ellie might actually learn to cook." The casual jab stung more than it should have. I saw Sarah flinch in sympathy. "Actually," I said, my voice steely, "I was telling Sarah about my blog. She's interested in starting one of her own." Ben's eyebrows shot up. "Really? Well, that's ambitious. Are you sure you have time for that, Sarah, with the kids and everything?" I watched the light dim in Sarah's eyes. "Oh, I don't know. It was just an idea." "Nonsense," I said firmly. "You absolutely could do it. I'd be happy to help you get started. Ben frowned. Ellie, don't go putting ideas in her head. Sarah's got enough on her plate already. Something snapped inside me. And what exactly is that supposed to mean, Ben? That women like us can't have aspirations beyond keeping house? The conversation around us quieted. Ben's face flushed. That's not what I meant. I just think. I know exactly what you think, I hissed. That we should be satisfied with being perfect little housewives, right? Never mind our own dreams or ambitions. Ellie, please, Ben muttered, glancing around nervously. You're making a scene. I laughed bitterly. Heaven forbid I embarrass you in front of your colleagues. Well, don't worry, I won't stay to tarnish your reputation. Grabbing my purse, I turned to Sarah. Call me if you want to talk about that blog, or anything else. As I stormed out, I heard Ben making excuses behind me. Sorry, she's not feeling well. You know how women can be. Tears blurred my vision as I fumbled for my car keys. I'd tried so hard to be what Ben wanted, and for what? To be belittled and dismissed? Sitting in the parking lot, engine idling, I made a decision. No more perfect housewife act. No more bending over backwards to meet impossible standards. It was time to show Ben, to show everyone, exactly what Ellie Matthews was capable of, and God help anyone who tried to stand in my way. I stormed into Ben's office, a whirlwind of righteous anger. After the faculty dinner fiasco, I was done playing the perfect wife. It was time for a confrontation. The hallway was eerily quiet, most professors gone for the day. I reached for the doorknob, then froze. Muffled voices drifted through the wood. Ben wasn't alone. We can't keep doing this, Amy. Ben's voice, low and intimate. My heart stopped. Amy? His young research assistant? I know, a female voice replied, trembling, but I can't help how I feel about you. The world tilted on its axis. I stumbled back, my hand flying to my mouth to stifle a gasp. It's complicated, Ben sighed. Ellie? Hearing my name on his lips, spoken with such resignation, shattered something inside me. Before I could think, I shoved the door open. The scene before me burned into my retinas. Ben, shirt half unbuttoned, arms around a petite blonde. They sprang apart, guilt etched on their faces. Ellie, Ben's voice cracked. This isn't, I can explain. I held up a hand, silencing him, my gaze locked on Amy, who looked ready to bolt. How long? She flinched, unable to meet my eyes. 3 months, she whispered, 3 months. While I'd been killing myself to be the perfect wife, he'd been... A hysterical laugh bubbled up. Ellie, please, Ben pleaded. It was a mistake. It didn't mean anything. Didn't mean anything, I echoed, my voice dangerously calm. You've been sleeping with your student for 3 months, and it didn't mean anything. Amy's eyes widened. Student? But you told me you were separated. I turned to her, a spark of pity breaking through my rage. Oh, honey, he lied to you too. Ben's face drained of color. Amy, I can explain. Save it, she spat, grabbing her bag. I'm done being your dirty little secret. As Amy fled, I faced my husband, the man I'd loved since high school, the man I'd bent over backwards trying to please. Well, I said, crossing my arms, I'm waiting for that explanation. Ben ran a hand through his hair, desperation in his eyes. It was a moment of weakness. I've been under so much stress lately, and Amy was there, and... God, Ellie, I'm so sorry. Stress? I laughed bitterly. You want to talk about stress? Try maintaining a perfect home, a successful blog, and a marriage to a man who constantly belittles your efforts. That's stress? Ben. He reached for me, but I stepped back. I know I've been hard on you lately. I missed the old Ellie, the one who wasn't so obsessed with perfection. White-hot anger surged through me. The old Ellie wasn't good enough for you, remember? You wanted a perfect wife, so that's what I became, and it still wasn't enough. That's not true, Ben protested weakly. Isn't it? You criticized my housekeeping, my cooking, even my blog. Nothing I did was ever good enough, so you went looking for someone better. Tears streamed down my face, but I didn't bother wiping them away. Let him see the mess he'd made of me. Ellie, please, Ben begged. We can work through this. I'll do anything. Counseling, whatever you want. I stared at him, this stranger wearing my husband's face. All the love, all the history between us, tainted by his betrayal. In that moment, I made a decision. No more bending over backwards, no more sacrificing my happiness for his. You're right, Ben, I said quietly. We can't keep doing this. Hope flickered in his eyes. So you'll give me another chance? I shook my head, a weight lifting from my shoulders. No, I'm giving myself another chance, without you. As I walked out of his office, out of our marriage, I felt something I hadn't in years. Freedom. The path ahead was uncertain, terrifying even, but for the first time in a long time it was mine to choose. Let Ben deal with the fallout of his actions. I had a life to reclaim. My hands shook as I fumbled with the key to our Ben's house. The confrontation in his office replayed in my mind, fueling a fire of rage and determination. I had one goal now: gather my things and leave before he could sweet-talk his way out of this mess. As I burst through the door, a familiar voice stopped me cold. "Ellie, what's going on?" Amy stood in our living room, looking lost and tearful. I froze, my mind reeling. "What are you doing here?" She wrung her hands. I came to apologize, to explain. I had no idea you and Ben were still together. He told me you were separated, that you were just keeping up appearances for his career." A bitter laugh escaped me. "Of course he did. And you believed him?" Amy's face crumpled. "I'm so sorry, Ellie. I never meant to hurt anyone. I thought we were in love." The last word hit me like a physical blow. Love. Had Ben ever truly loved me, or had I just been a convenient prop in his perfect professor life? Before I could respond, the front door flew open. Ben rushed in, his eyes wild. "Ellie, please, we need to talk." He stopped short, seeing Amy. "What are you doing here?" "Apparently cleaning up your mess," I snapped. "Did you really think you could keep juggling us both?" Ben's face paled. "It's not like that. I never meant for any of this to happen." "But it did happen, Ben," I shouted, years of pent-up frustration bursting free. "You lied to both of us. You made me feel inadequate, pushed me to be this perfect wife, all while carrying on with your student." Amy flinched at the word student. "Is that true? Am I going to lose my scholarship over this?" Ben turned to her, panic in his eyes. No, of course not. We can keep this quiet. No one has to know." "Are you kidding me?" I interrupted. "You're still trying to cover this up? What about taking responsibility for once in your life?" "You don't understand," Ben pleaded. "If this gets out, I could lose my job, my reputation." "Your reputation?" Amy's voice rose, hysteria edging in. "What about my future, my career? God, I'm such an idiot." As they argued, a calm settled over me. I'd spent so long trying to be what Ben wanted, I'd lost sight of myself. But now, watching him scramble to salvage his carefully constructed image, I saw him clearly for the first time. "Enough," I said quietly. They both turned to me, startled by my tone. "This ends now." Ben stepped towards me, desperation in his eyes. "Ellie, please, we can work this out. I'll do anything. Just don't..." "Don't what, Ben? Don't tell the truth. Don't shatter your precious reputation." I shook my head. "I'm done protecting you. I'm done being your perfect little wife." I turned to Amy, who looked ready to bolt. "You should go to the dean, report what happened, protect yourself and your future." "Ellie, no," Ben shouted. "You can't do this to me." Something snapped inside me. "I can't do this to you. What about what you've done to us? To our marriage, to Amy's trust?" I grabbed my phone, fingers flying over the keys. "You want to talk about reputations? Let's see what your colleagues think when they read my next blog post. Living my truth, how I discovered my husband's affair and found myself." Ben lunged for the phone, but I danced away. "Don't you dare," he growled. "Or what?" I challenged. "You'll belittle me some more? Make me feel small and inadequate?" "Those days are over, Ben." As I hit publish, a weight lifted from my shoulders. Ben's face contorted with rage and fear, but I felt only relief. "It's done," I said quietly. "The truth is out there now. Deal with the consequences." I turned to leave, but Ben grabbed my arm. "You've ruined everything," he hissed. As I stared into the eyes of the man I once loved, now a stranger, I realized this was far from over. The real battle was just beginning. I stood on Hannah and George's doorstep, my heart pounding. The weight of what I was about to do threatened to crush me, but I steeled myself. There was no going back now. Hannah opened the door, her smile fading as she took in my tear-stained face. "Ellie? What's wrong, dear?" I couldn't hold it in any longer. The whole sordid tale came pouring out, Ben's affair, the confrontation, my blog post exposing it all. By the time I finished, we were sitting in their living room, Hannah's arm around me while George paced, his face thunderous. "I'll kill him," George muttered. "My own son? How could he do this?" Hannah squeezed my hand. "What do you need from us, Ellie?" I took a deep breath. "I want a divorce. And I need your support. Ben's going to fight this, I know it." The words hung in the air, heavy with finality. Hannah and George exchanged a look, years of unspoken communication passing between them. "Of course we support you," Hannah said firmly. "What Ben did is unforgivable." Relief washed over me, followed quickly by guilt. "I'm so sorry. I never wanted to come between you and your son." George stopped pacing, his expression softening. "You didn't, Ellie. Ben did that all on his own." Just then, my phone buzzed. A notification from my blog, comments pouring in on my latest post. I hesitated, then opened it. "Oh my God," I whispered. "What is it?" Hannah leaned in, concerned. I showed her the screen, my hands shaking. "My post. It's gone viral. Thousands of shares, hundreds of comments, women sharing their own stories of infidelity and empowerment." As I scrolled, another notification popped up. An email from a major publishing house expressing interest in turning my story into a book. "I don't understand," I said, overwhelmed. "How did this happen so fast?" George chuckled. "You underestimate your influence, Ellie. Your blog has quite the following." The realization hit me like a tidal wave. All those years of curating the perfect image, and it was my moment of raw honesty that resonated the most. Before I could process it, my phone rang. Ben's name flashed on the screen. "Don't answer it," Hannah advised, but I shook my head. "I have to face him sometime." I took a deep breath and answered. "Hello. How dare you?" Ben's voice was low, dangerous. "Do you have any idea what you've done? The dean's called an emergency meeting. My career is on the line." Anger flared in my chest. "Your career? What about my life, Ben? The years I wasted trying to be perfect for you." "Perfect?" he scoffed. "You were suffocating me with your obsession, and now you've ruined everything. I hope you're happy." The line went dead. I stared at the phone, numb. "Ellie?" Hannah's voice seemed far away. "What did he say?" I looked up, meeting their concerned gazes. "He blames me for everything." George's face darkened. That boy never could take responsibility for his actions. "But he's right," I whispered. "I did ruin everything. Our marriage, his career." Hannah took my hands firmly. "No, Ben ruined those things when he chose to betray you. You simply told the truth." As her words sank in, another email notification pinged. This time, from our joint bank account. My blood ran cold as I read the message. "He's emptied our accounts, transferred everything to a private account in his name." The room spun. Years of savings gone in an instant. My entire life dismantled in a matter of hours. "That's it," George said, reaching for his phone. "I'm calling our lawyer." I stared at the email, Ben's final act of betrayal burning into my retinas. In that moment, I realized the true battle was just beginning. Ben wouldn't go down without a fight, and neither would I. "No," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'll call my own lawyer. It's time I stood on my own 2 feet." As I dialed the number, a strange calm settled over me. The life I'd known was over, but a new one was just beginning. And this time, I'd be the one in control. I stood in the courtroom, my heart pounding as the judge prepared to deliver her verdict. Months of bitter legal battles had led to this moment. Ben sat across the aisle, his once handsome face haggard and resentful. "In the matter of Matthews versus Matthews," the judge began, her voice echoing in the tense silence, "this court finds in favor of the plaintiff, Ellie Matthews." A collective gasp rippled through the room. I closed my eyes, relief washing over me like a tidal wave. "Furthermore," the judge continued, "given the evidence of financial misconduct, Mr. Matthews is ordered to repay all funds illegally transferred from joint accounts, plus interest." I opened my eyes to see Ben's face contort with rage. He leapt to his feet, shouting, "This is outrageous! She ruined my career, and now you're taking everything?" "Mr. Matthews, control yourself or I'll hold you in contempt," the judge warned. As Ben sank back into his seat, defeated, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. It was over. I was free. Outside the courthouse, Hannah and George enveloped me in a warm embrace. "We're so proud of you, Ellie," Hannah whispered, tears in her eyes. "Thank you," I said, my voice thick with emotion. "I couldn't have done this without your support." As we turned to leave, a familiar voice called out. "Ellie, wait!" Ben approached, his expression a mix of anger and desperation. "Can we talk? Please?" I hesitated, then nodded to Hannah and George. "I'll be fine," I assured them. Once alone, Ben's facade crumbled. "I'm sorry," he said, his voice breaking. "I know I messed up, but isn't there any way we can fix this? Start over?" For a moment, I saw a glimmer of the man I'd fallen in love with all those years ago. But then I remembered the lies, the betrayal, the years of feeling inadequate. No, Ben, I said softly. We can't go back. Too much has changed. Because of your blog? He scoffed. Your newfound fame? I shook my head. Because I've changed. I'm not the woman who bent over backwards trying to please you anymore. I like who I've become. Ben's face hardened. So that's it? You're just going to throw away 15 years of marriage? You threw it away, I corrected him gently. I'm just picking up the pieces and building something new. As I turned to walk away, Ben called out, You'll regret this, Ellie. You need me. I paused, looking back at him one last time. No, Ben, I don't. And that's the most liberating thing I've ever realized. Weeks later, I sat in my new apartment, surrounded by boxes yet to be unpacked. My laptop glowed with the final draft of my book, part memoir, part self-help guide for women reclaiming their lives. A notification pinged, another message from my blog's community. Women sharing their own stories of empowerment, thanking me for giving them courage. Tears pricked my eyes as I read their words. All those years of curating a perfect image, and it was my raw, honest truth that resonated the most. My phone buzzed. A text from Sarah, Jack's wife. Coffee tomorrow? I have big news. I smiled, remembering our conversation at the faculty dinner. She'd started her own blog, inspired by my journey. Now she was talking about going back to school, pursuing her long-forgotten dreams. As I typed a reply, I caught sight of my reflection in the window. Gone was the perfectly coiffed, perpetually stressed woman I'd been for so long. In her place was someone softer, stronger, someone real. The doorbell rang, startling me from my reverie. I opened it to find Hannah, arms laden with groceries. I thought you might need some help settling in, she said with a warm smile. You didn't have to do that, I protested, but she waved me off. Nonsense. You're family, Ellie. That hasn't changed. As we unpacked the groceries, chatting and laughing, I felt a profound sense of peace settle over me. My life hadn't turned out the way I'd planned, but maybe that was okay. I'd lost a husband, but gained a true family. Lost a facade, but found my authentic self. And in sharing my story, I'd connected with countless women on similar journeys. For the first time in years, I wasn't worried about being perfect. I was simply happy being me. As Hannah and I clinked coffee mugs in a toast to new beginnings, I knew with absolute certainty the best was yet to come. The clinking of silverware against fine china echoed through the dining room, punctuated by the occasional polite cough or forced chuckle. My smile felt tight as I surveyed the scene before me. My family gathered for our weekly dinner, a ritual that once filled me with warmth but now felt like a charade. So, Derek, I began, my voice cutting through the tension like a knife, how are things at the office? Derek, my son-in-law, paused mid-bite, his fork hovering in the air. With a carefully crafted smile, he replied, Couldn't be better, Lorraine. The team's been knocking it out of the park. My gaze shifted to my daughter Elise, who beamed with pride. Seeing her devotion to this man made my stomach churn. If only she knew the truth. As the conversation drifted to more mundane topics, I excused myself, feigning a need to freshen up. In truth, I needed a moment to collect my thoughts. The hall bathroom provided a brief respite, but the raised voices from the dining room soon shattered the illusion of peace. Can't keep this up forever. Derek's hushed tone carried an unmistakable edge. We need to act fast before she catches on. My breath caught in my throat as realization dawned. He was plotting something, and it involved my late husband's company, the business I had poured my heart and soul into preserving. Pressing my ear against the door, I strained to make out Elise's muffled response. But Mom, she'll never agree to it. Then we don't give her a choice. Derek snapped. This is our chance to secure our future, and I won't let anyone stand in our way, not even your mother. The weight of his words hit me like a ton of bricks. My own daughter conspiring against me with her husband, the man I had once welcomed into our family with open arms. Tears stung my eyes as I fought the urge to burst through the door and confront them. Steeling myself, I took a deep breath and rejoined them, plastering on a smile that belied the turmoil raging within me. As I caught Derek's satisfied smirk, a newfound determination took root. He had no idea what he was up against. This was war, and I would do whatever it took to protect my husband's legacy, even if it meant going against my own flesh and blood. The days following that fateful dinner crawled by, each one more excruciating than the last. Elise remained distant, her once warm demeanor replaced by a guarded chill that cut deeper than any knife. Derek, on the other hand, strutted around with an infuriating smugness, as if he'd already won. I knew I had to act fast, but I needed proof of his misdeeds. Something concrete to shatter his carefully constructed facade. That's when I stumbled upon the financial records hidden in his study. "Elise, you need to see this," I urged, thrusting the incriminating documents into her hands. Her brow furrowed as she scanned the pages. "What is all this?" "Evidence that your precious husband has been embezzling from the company," I spat, my anger boiling over. "He's been bleeding us dry for years, right under our noses." Elise recoiled as if struck, her expression a mixture of disbelief and hurt. "Mom, how could you accuse Derek of something like that? These numbers, they must be a mistake." "A mistake?" I let out a bitter laugh. "Open your eyes, Elise. That snake has been playing us both for fools." Derek chose that moment to saunter in, his eyes narrowing as he took in the scene before him. "What's going on here?" "Your wife seems to have uncovered your little secret," I snarled, thrusting the documents at him. "Care to explain yourself?" For a fleeting moment, his mask slipped, revealing the ruthless predator lurking beneath, but just as quickly it was replaced by a look of feigned innocence. "Lorraine, you're not making any sense," he said, his voice dripping with false concern. "These are just routine financial reports. I've done nothing wrong." "Don't lie to me," I roared, all pretense of civility abandoned. "I know you've been bleeding the company dry, and I won't let you get away with it." Derek's veneer finally cracked, his true colors bursting forth in a torrent of rage. "You stupid old woman! You have no idea what you're up against." He turned to Elise, his eyes pleading. "Sweetheart, you have to believe me. Your mother's lost her mind." Elise stood frozen, her gaze darting between us, torn between the man she loved and the mother who had raised her. In that moment, I saw the first glimmer of doubt flicker across her face. She faltered, her voice small and uncertain. "I don't know what to believe anymore." With a contemptuous sneer, Derek wrapped his arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "Don't worry, my love. We'll get through this together, no matter what it takes." As they turned and left the room, I sank into the nearest chair, my hands trembling with a potent mix of rage and sorrow. The battle lines had been drawn, and there would be no turning back. Derek had made his move, but he had no idea the lengths I was willing to go to protect what was mine. This was far from over. In the days that followed, the once warm atmosphere in my home had turned icy, with tension seeping through every nook and cranny. Elise avoided me like the plague, her loyalty to that snake Derek unwavering, despite the evidence of his deceit. I knew I couldn't take him on alone, not with the resources at his disposal. That's when fate intervened in the form of Jenna Williams, a young hotshot lawyer with a chip on her shoulder and a vendetta against Derek. "Mrs. Robertson, we need to talk," she announced, barging into my living room one afternoon without preamble. I eyed her warily, taking in her no-nonsense demeanor. "And you are?" "Jenna Williams, attorney at law." She thrust out a manicured hand, her grip firm and unyielding. "I represent a client who was defrauded by your son-in-law in a business deal gone wrong." My interest piqued, I motioned for her to take a seat. "I'm listening." For the next hour, Jenna laid out a damning case against Derek, detailing his web of lies, manipulation, and illegal activities. By the time she finished, my blood was boiling. "That snake has been playing us all," I growled, slamming my fist on the coffee table. "He needs to be stopped." Jenna's eyes gleamed with a predatory light. "That's where you come in, Mrs. Robertson. With your insider knowledge and my legal expertise, we can bring Derek down once and for all." I hesitated, the weight of her proposition hanging heavy in the air. Could I really go to such lengths, even if it meant turning against my own daughter? As if sensing my hesitation, Jenna leaned forward, her gaze intense. "Look, I get it. Family loyalty is a powerful thing. But ask yourself this, how far is Derek willing to go to protect his interests? Do you really think he has your daughter's best interests at heart?" Her words struck a nerve, reigniting the fury that had been simmering within me. Derek was a cancer, slowly poisoning everything he touched. If I didn't act, he would destroy not only the company, but my family as well. Squaring my shoulders, I met Jenna's gaze head-on. "All right, Miss Williams, I'm in. Let's take that son of a bitch down." A feral grin spread across her face as she extended her hand. It's a pleasure doing business with you, Mrs. Robertson. As our hands clasped, sealing our unholy alliance, I felt a renewed sense of determination coursing through my veins. Derek might be a formidable foe, but he had no idea what he was up against. Together, Jenna and I would expose his lies and bring him to his knees, no matter the cost. The game was on, and I intended to play for keeps. The days melted into weeks as Jenna and I worked tirelessly to gather evidence against Derek. Every phone call, every late-night meeting carried the weight of our mission, to expose his misdeeds and bring him to justice, no matter the cost. "We need more," Jenna growled, slamming her fist on the table laden with financial records and incriminating documents. "This is damning, but not enough to guarantee a conviction." I pinched the bridge of my nose, exhaustion weighing heavy on my shoulders. "What else do you need? I've given you everything I could find." Jenna leveled her steely gaze at me. "We need a smoking gun, something irrefutable that proves his intent to defraud the company." As if on cue, my phone buzzed with an incoming call from an unknown number. Frowning, I answered cautiously. "Hello?" "Mrs. Robertson, it's me." The tremulous voice belonged to Derek's assistant, Tina. "I have something you need to see." Within the hour, Tina was seated across from us, her hands trembling as she slid a flash drive across the table. "This contains copies of emails and financial records detailing Mr. Winslow's illegal dealings with offshore accounts." Jenna snatched up the drive, her eyes alight with a predatory gleam. "This is it. The evidence we need to bury that bastard." Tina wrung her hands, her gaze darting between us. "I couldn't stand by and let him destroy the company any longer, not after everything you and Mr. Robertson built." Reaching across the table, I covered her hand with my own, a surge of gratitude washing over me. "Thank you, Tina. You're a brave woman." She offered a weak smile before rising to her feet. "Just make sure he pays for what he's done." As the door clicked shut behind her, Jenna let out a low whistle. "She's got guts. I'll give her that." "We all do what we must?" I murmured, my thoughts drifting to Elise and the sacrifices I was willing to make to protect her future. Jenna's voice snapped me back to the present. "Now that we have what we need, it's time to take that snake down once and for all." The days that followed were a whirlwind of strategy sessions and meticulous planning. We knew Derek wouldn't go down without a fight, so we had to be prepared for anything. Every move, every contingency was calculated with surgical precision. As the crucial board meeting loomed, the tension was thick enough to cut with a knife. Derek remained oblivious to our efforts, strutting around with his usual arrogant bravado. Little did he know, his world was about to come crashing down around him. The night before the meeting, I found myself staring out the window, watching the moonlight dance across the backyard where Elise used to play as a child. So much had changed, so many bonds frayed in the pursuit of justice. But as I clutched the damning evidence in my hands, I knew there was no turning back. Derek had made his bed, and now he would lie in it. Come morning, the game would reach its climax, and I intended to be the last one standing. The familiar hum of the office should have been comforting, but as I strode down the hallway, briefcase in hand, a sense of trepidation gnawed at me. Today was the day, the culmination of weeks of planning, strategizing, and sleepless nights. "Morning, Mrs. Robertson." Derek's cheerful voice cut through the din like a hot knife through butter. He fell into step beside me, that ever-present smirk plastered across his face. "You're looking radiant as always." I suppressed a shudder, forcing a tight smile. "Derek, I trust you're prepared for today's meeting?" "Of course," he replied, his tone dripping with false sincerity. "I always come prepared." If only he knew the truth, that this very meeting would be his undoing. Jenna and I had spent countless hours rehearsing, ensuring every detail was accounted for, every contingency planned for. As we rounded the corner, I caught sight of Elise hovering near the conference room door. Her brow furrowed when she spotted us, and I could see the conflict raging behind her eyes. "Mom," she began, her voice catching in her throat, "can we talk for a minute?" Derek shot her a warning glance, but I raised a hand, silencing him. "Of course, dear." Ushering her into a nearby office, I studied her drawn features, my heart aching at the turmoil etched into her face. "I don't know what to believe anymore," she whispered, her eyes glistening with unshed tears. "Derek swears he's innocent, but there's just something off about the way he's been acting lately." I longed to pull her into my arms, to shield her from the harsh realities we were about to face, but I knew this was a battle she needed to fight on her own. "Listen to your instincts, Elise," I murmured, cupping her cheek. "Deep down, you know the truth." She opened her mouth to respond, but a sharp rap on the door cut her off. "5 minutes to go," Jenna called out, her voice laced with urgency. With a trembling sigh, Elise stepped back, her expression hardening into a mask of determination. We should get in there. As we filed into the conference room, the tension was palpable. Derek held court at the head of the table, flanked by his loyal cronies. But as my gaze swept across the assembled faces, I took heart in the handful of allies Jenna and I had managed to turn. Men and women who had seen through Derek's lies and were ready to take a stand. "Shall we begin?" Derek's voice boomed, snapping me back to reality. This was it, the moment of truth. With a subtle nod to Jenna, I steeled myself for the battle ahead. No more games, no more deception. It was time for Derek Winslow to face the consequences of his actions. Come hell or high water, I would see him burn. The conference room descended into a tense silence as Derek launched into his opening remarks, his smooth baritone masking the venom that lurked beneath. I fought the urge to roll my eyes at his blatant attempts to cast himself as the wronged party, the victim of some grand conspiracy. Jenna caught my eye from across the table, a silent signal passing between us. It was time. "If I may interject," I called out, my voice ringing with a confidence I didn't quite feel. All eyes swiveled in my direction, and I could sense Derek's irritation simmering beneath the surface. "Mrs. Robertson," he drawled, his tone laced with forced patience. "I was under the impression this was a board meeting, not a therapy session for your delusions." A ripple of unease swept through the room, but I held my ground, leveling my gaze at the man who had once been like a son to me. "I think it's time we address the elephant in the room, Derek." His eyes narrowed, but I pressed on, nodding at Jenna to cue the projector. "For years, you've been bleeding this company dry through a complex web of offshore accounts and dummy corporations." As the damning financial records flickered across the screen, a hush fell over the attendees. Even Derek's staunchest allies shifted uncomfortably in their seats, the weight of the evidence undeniable. Derek, however, maintained his composure, a derisive chuckle escaping his lips. "Really, Lorraine? This is what you've resorted to? Slandering me with doctored documents and baseless accusations? I wouldn't be so sure about that." All heads swiveled as Tina, Derek's former assistant, stepped into the room, clutching a thick manila envelope. Derek's smug facade faltered, his eyes widening in a rare display of unguarded emotion. "Tina, what is the meaning of this?" "The meaning," she said, her voice trembling but resolute, "is that I can no longer be complicit in your crimes, Mr. Winslow." With a deft flick of her wrist, she upended the envelope, scattering its contents across the table. A damning trail of emails, bank statements, and ledgers, all bearing the irrefutable proof of Derek's illegalities. A deafening silence blanketed the room as the reality of the situation sank in. Derek's allies exchanged uneasy glances, their allegiances fracturing before our very eyes. Derek, for his part, had abandoned all pretense of civility. His handsome features contorted into a mask of rage as he rounded on me, spittle flying from his lips. "You conniving old witch! How dare you turn my own people against me?" Before anyone could react, Jenna was on her feet, her steely gaze boring into Derek's. "That's enough, Winslow. The jig is up. We have more than enough evidence to bury you in criminal charges, embezzlement, fraud, money laundering, you name it." Derek's chest heaved with each ragged breath, his eyes darting around the room like a cornered animal. For a fleeting moment our gazes locked, and I saw the ugly truth laid bare. He was a soulless monster, consumed by greed and ambition. Then, as quickly as it had come, the moment passed. His shoulders slumped in defeat, and he sank back into his chair, the fight draining from his body. "Well played, Lorraine," he muttered, a twisted smile curling his lips. "Well played indeed." As security swept in to escort him away, I caught Elise's eye from across the room. Tears streamed down her cheeks, her expression a heartbreaking mix of anguish and relief. In that moment, I knew the hard road to healing lay ahead. But as Derek's scathing glare bore into me one last time, I felt an odd sense of peace wash over me. The battle had been won, even if the war had exacted a heavy toll. Come what may, I would face it head on. my daughter by my side. Derek Winslow was gone, but the fight for my family's future had only just begun. The days following Derek's dramatic ousting were a whirlwind of activity. Lawyers, accountants, and investigators swarmed the office, meticulously untangling the intricate web of deceit he had woven. Meetings stretched late into the night as we grappled with the full extent of his misdeeds, the company teetering on the brink of financial ruin. Through it all, Elise remained a stoic presence by my side, her unwavering support a beacon of strength in the eye of the storm. Yet, I could see the toll it was taking on her, the sleepless nights, the occasional vacant stare when she thought no one was looking. "She's holding up better than I expected," Jenna murmured one evening as we pored over the latest stack of financial reports. I followed her gaze to where Elise sat hunched over her laptop, her brow furrowed in concentration. "For now, perhaps. But this is just the calm before the storm." As if on cue, the office door burst open, and Derek's lawyer, a slimy character named Roth, blustered in, his face flushed with indignation. "This is an outrage," he bellowed, slamming his briefcase onto the nearest desk. "My client has been subjected to unlawful persecution and character assassination." Jenna arched a perfectly sculpted brow, her expression one of bored indifference. "Your client is facing multiple felony charges, Roth. I'd say he's getting off easy." Roth opened his mouth to retort, but I cut him off with a sharp wave of my hand. "Enough! We're not here to entertain your theatrics. State your business or show yourself out." His beady eyes narrowed, but he seemed to think better of further antagonizing us. "Very well. My client is prepared to offer a plea deal in exchange for leniency." A derisive snort escaped Jenna's lips. "And why, pray tell, would we entertain such a ludicrous proposition?" "Because," Roth sneered, "my client has information that could prove detrimental to certain parties involved in his downfall." The implication hung heavy in the air, and I felt a chill run down my spine. Of course, the snake would try to slither his way out of the noose, even if it meant dragging others down with him. Elise had gone rigid at her workstation, her knuckles white as she gripped the edge of the desk. "He's bluffing," she murmured, her voice laced with a desperation that belied her words. Roth's gaze shifted to her, his lips curling into a predatory smile. "Am I, though? Your dear husband has a knack for uncovering secrets, even those buried deepest in the family closet." A tense silence stretched between us, punctuated only by the faint ticking of the wall clock. Finally, Jenna broke the stillness, her voice a low, dangerous growl. "Get out." Roth's eyes widened in mock surprise. "You're not even going to hear me out? Who knows what skeletons Mr. Winslow might have unearthed in his quest for—" "I said, get out." Jenna was on her feet now, her finger jabbing the air mere inches from Roth's pallid face. "Before I have you forcibly removed from the premises." For a moment it seemed he might press his luck, but something in Jenna's steely gaze must have given him pause. With a disdainful sniff, he snatched up his briefcase and turned on his heel, muttering curses under his breath as he stormed out. The office descended into a heavy silence, the weight of Roth's thinly veiled threats hanging over us like a dark cloud. Elise's shoulders trembled, and I moved to her side, enveloping her in a fierce embrace. "It'll be all right, sweetheart," I murmured, stroking her hair. "That snake has no venom left to strike with." Yet even as the words left my lips, a tendril of doubt snaked its way into my heart. Derek was a master manipulator, and if there was one thing I'd learned, it was never to underestimate his capacity for cruelty. The battle might have been won, but the war was far from over. The months that followed Derek's downfall were a whirlwind of legal battles and painstaking reconstruction. As the dust settled, the true extent of his betrayal became painfully clear. The company teetered on the brink of financial ruin, its coffers drained by his greed. Yet, through it all, Elise remained a steadfast presence by my side, her resilience a constant source of strength. Together, we pored over financial records, negotiated with creditors, and laid the groundwork for a fresh start, a future untainted by Derek's poisonous influence. "I can't believe he had the audacity to threaten us like that," Elise muttered one evening as we pored over the latest batch of legal documents. I glanced up from the stack of papers, my lips pressed into a grim line. That's just who Derek is, a snake who'll strike at anyone foolish enough to get in his way. Well, he miscalculated this time. There was a steely glint in her eye, a newfound resolve that made my heart swell with pride. We're not going to let him slither back into our lives. As if on cue, Jenna breezed into the room, her hair tousled and a triumphant grin playing across her lips. Ladies, I come bearing good news. She brandished a thick manila envelope, letting it fall onto the desk with a dull thud. Derek's plea deal has been finalized. He's looking at a hefty prison sentence, plus financial restitution to the company. A collective sigh of relief escaped our lips, the weight of months of uncertainty finally lifting from our shoulders. Elise's smile was radiant, her eyes shining with unshed tears of joy. It's really over, she breathed, her voice tinged with disbelief. Jenna's gaze softened as she regarded us both. Not quite. There's still the matter of rebuilding and moving forward. Her words hung in the air, a sobering reminder of the challenges that lay ahead. For so long, our sole focus had been on excising Derek's cancer from our lives. Now, we faced the daunting task of healing the wounds he had inflicted, of reclaiming what was rightfully ours. Yet, as I looked around the office, the very heart of my late husband's legacy, I felt a renewed sense of determination coursing through my veins. This was our chance, our opportunity to rise from the ashes and forge a brighter future. You're right, Jenna, I said, my voice ringing with conviction. It's time to roll up our sleeves and get to work. The days and weeks that followed were a whirlwind of activity, as Elise and I threw ourselves into the task of rebuilding. We restructured departments, negotiated new contracts, and implemented stricter financial controls, all in an effort to safeguard against any future threats. Through it all, I marveled at the woman my daughter had become, strong, resilient, and fiercely loyal. The shadows of Derek's betrayal still lingered in her eyes, but they were overshadowed by a newfound sense of purpose, a determination to forge her own path. As the sun set on our first day of renewed operations, Elise and I lingered in the empty office, basking in the quiet sense of accomplishment. "Can you believe it, Mom?" she murmured, her gaze sweeping over the familiar surroundings. "We actually did it." I wrapped an arm around her shoulders, pulling her close. "Of course we did, sweetheart. We're Robertson women, tough as nails and twice as stubborn." Her musical laughter filled the air, and in that moment, I knew that no matter what challenges lay ahead, we would face them together, united in our strength and resilience. As the last rays of daylight faded, casting long shadows across the room, I couldn't help but feel a sense of bittersweet nostalgia. So much had changed, so many battles fought and won. Yet, in the end, it all came back to this, my family, my legacy, and the unwavering bond that held us together. Derek might have tried to tear us apart, but in doing so, he had only made us stronger. His poisonous influence was but a distant memory, a cautionary tale of what happens when greed and ambition consume a soul. As for us, well, we had a future to forge. One built on the foundations of love, loyalty, and an unbreakable spirit. And this time, nothing and no one would stand in our way.